in the world is going on? Sidhu said he's meeting Rahul Gandhi. Rahul Gandhi rolled down the windows to say, I'm not meeting anyone. What's happening? Is the Congress, according to you, starting a process of self-destruction in Punjab?
What's very clear is that the Congress has no clear strategy for Punjab at the moment. And that is a terrible position to be in 6 months before a major election, because you've had 4.5 years of Captain Amarinder Singh. Most of the issues which have been raised against the captain's style of functioning have existed for much of these last 4.5 years. But it's only now that the Congress seems to be willing to actually either rein in the captain or act against him. And then you have Navjot Singh Sidhu, popular but mercurial. And I think the Congress, frankly, is caught between the devil and the deep blue sea at the moment.
In a democracy, people have a right to know, with reasonable restrictions, what's going on in the political party which is ruling them, or which seeks to rule them. Nothing wrong in going public as far as Mr. Sidhu is concerned or anyone is concerned. People have, as I said, and I repeat, with reasonable restrictions, people have a right. Democracy is not just what's happening in the government. Democracy also means what's happening within a party.
Gandhis have a personal equation. Sonia Gandhi has a personal equation with Captain Amarinder Singh. Rahul and Priyanka Gandhi have personal equation with Navjot Sidhu. But they don't want to color this personal equation into politics. The Congress game plan is very simple. They want to win this election. Sidhu has a future. Sidhu has mass appeal. The Congress mandate is very simple. They want Sidhu and Captain to come together.
This organizational explosion, Rahul, is not merely happening at the top level where Sidhu is fighting with Captain, Channi is fighting with Sukhi. There are 7-8 chief ministerial aspirants from Pratap Bajwa to A, B, C, D. I'm not going to name all of them. When these 8 tall leaders, including Captain Amarinder, fight with themselves, it is not just the fight that happens at the top and usually gets reported in the media. Their respective supporters and workers and the cadre, they also fight among themselves. So therefore, the fight is not merely happening at the state level, but at the district level, at the halka level, then at the pind level, and then at the booth level.
The threat to the Congress is not just from the BJP. The biggest threat to the Congress is going to come from AAP, which will follow the Delhi model to actually attack the Congress in vulnerable small states where the AAP still believes it can become a third alternative. Therefore, I quite understand why the Congress ought to be in pressing the panic buttons where Punjab is concerned.
What explains this? You've lived in Hyderabad for years, but we are finding more and more such instances of hit-and-run accidents in your city.
What I personally feel that it is the parents also who is responsible for that, and especially when we talk about the super luxury cars, it is mainly the parents who give these cars to their underage sons, or even those who have who possess the license. But unfortunately, they don't have the proper the guidance, they don't have the proper education, and and we have noticed most of these accidents happening after 12 p.m. in the night. That is when they come out of the the pubs.
So there are three points you're making, Khalikur. One is that a number of them you found, in number of cases they've been drunk. Number two, they're late night or early morning. They come from wealthy families and they use these high-speed new cars. Mr. Vijay Kumar, it appears at the moment that Hyderabad has seen a spate of instances in the last 10 or 15 days. What explains it? Is there a pattern that you've also detected, Mr. Vijay Kumar?
When we realized that the drunk driving has become one of the biggest reasons for road accidents, we have been conducting regular and continuous drunk driving checkings in the city, particularly this part of city, CYBERABAD, with IT corridor and lot of nightlife. We have come to know that this drunk driving has been one of the biggest causes for road accidents. As police officers, our duty is to identify what is happening on the roads as traffic police in the city and keep on taking action against wrongdoers.
The government stands accused of hounding Twitter, as some argue, in an attempt to get them to fall in line, with a number of FIRs being registered against the microblogging platform.
Twitter has to follow the Intermediary Guidelines and Digital Media Ethics Codes Rules 2021. There can absolutely be no compromise with that. Twitter must know it has a huge market in India. It's almost 17.5 million users in India. And when you compare this market with UK, Brazil and Indonesia, I'm sure we are much more than these countries.
Okay.
If they have to actually carry out this business, they have to follow the rules of the land. This is one fact. And number two, they cannot just depict India wrongly. I think it's a crime to show the map of India on the career section of Twitter. And this particular map clearly shows that Ladakh and Jammu and Kashmir are not part of India. And I'm sure this is not accidental, this is intentional, this is deliberate defiance.
This is not acceptable, and I think they have made, a rectification right now. But at the same time, holding the managing director of the company, the Indian company, liable and accountable for something which is being done by somebody sitting in the US. I think maps for Twitter is not managed by the India MD. It's been managed by their US entity. So why do we want to bring the Indian MD, the Indian person in line every time, file FIRs?
APRAJITA, Sarangi, respond to this point being made.
Twitter is represented in India by the MD. An MD cannot absolve himself of any kind of responsibility. He has to answer. If Twitter is creating any mischief in India, it's the MD who is responsible. And I tell you, through its actions and deliberate defiance, Twitter seeks to undermine the Indian legal system. And Twitter must comply with the laws of the land. My only question is, why hasn't Twitter, as per the intermediary guidelines, kept or rather nominated or appointed the chief compliance officer, the nodal officer and the grievance officer?